have to say, Richard, I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that until Welsh Government honours its 2016 manifesto commitment to improve the M4, the quickest way of us visiting each other will be a 30-year-old ferry chugging across the Bristol Channel.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I would like to point out that the British Sign Language interpretation of proceedings is available to watch on the Parliament Live TV. We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Jonathan Edwards.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Jonathan Edwards.
Diolch, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will be aware of the considerable public concern in relation to the impression that significant political donations can help acquire a peerage. The Honourable Member for Nahigan Nia will publish a bill later today which will prohibit large party donors from being nominated to the other place for a period of 5 years. Will he offer full government support to my honourable friend's efforts?
Mr. Speaker, I will study his proposals with care when the parties opposite commit to stop taking funds from the unions in order to control their policies.
Mr. Speaker, during a recent visit to Barnet Hospital, I was told that A&E there is routinely seeing twice the number of people for which it was designed. Thanks to the hard work of staff and big funding increases, the NHS is seeing more patients and delivering more tests, treatments and operation than at any time in its history. But what is the government doing to urgently assist the NHS to tackle spiralling demand for healthcare and a tough winter ahead?
I thank my right honourable friend because over the for what she does to represent her hospital, and I thank them, the NHS staff, for their amazing work that they're doing. We're supporting them by recruiting, as she knows, 50,000 more nurses, putting another £4.5 billion into the NHS over the rest of this financial year. And the best thing we can do to protect our NHS over this winter is everybody to come forward and get their booster vaccination.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Trust matters, and after the last fortnight, the Prime Minister's got a lot of work to do. A central plank in this government's promise to the north of England is a Crossrail of the North, with at least an entirely new high-speed rail line between Manchester and Leeds. A Crossrail for the north, an entirely new line. That is the promise. It's already been made. So I don't want the Prime Minister fobbing off the House about waiting till tomorrow. He can say today, will he stick by that promise, yes or no?
Prime Minister.
He should wait and see what is going to be announced tomorrow, because we will produce a fantastic integrated rail plan. I'm not going to spoil it for them, Mr. Speaker. Why would I? We're going to produce a fantastic...
Order. I expect the front bench to behave better than what it is doing at the moment. If you don't want to listen to the answer, let me know now. I do, and I cannot hear when you all shout together. We want better politics. I expect better politics from both sides. Let's show a little bit more decorum than we're seeing at the moment. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when we produce our integrated rail plan tomorrow, people across the House and across the country will see what we are doing to cut journey times, to make life easier and better for people in the North East, in the North West, in the Midlands, across the whole of the north of the country. Mr. Speaker, with the biggest programme of investment in rail for a century, Mr. Speaker, for a century. And what we are doing, Mr. Speaker, is we are giving people in those communities the same access to commuter-type services that people in the southeast of this country have felt entitled to for more than a century. And that is going to be levelling up across the whole of the UK, Mr. Speaker.
Keir Starmer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that was a lot of words. But it wasn't a yes. So that's one important promise to the North that he won't stand by. Let's look at another. In February this year, the Prime Minister told this House, I can certainly confirm that we are going to develop the eastern leg as well as the whole of HS2, the whole of HS2, a new high-speed line running continuously, no gaps, between Birmingham and Leeds. So will the Prime Minister confirm that he stands by that promise?
Prime Minister.
I'm afraid the right honourable gentleman is in danger of getting hoist on his own petard, Mr. Speaker. He needs to wait and see what we announce tomorrow, because I think he will find that the people of the North East, of the North West, the people of Leeds, the people of Nottingham, the people of Sheffield, and the people of the whole of the North West and the North East of this country will benefit massively from what we are going to announce.
Keir Starmer.
Again, Mr. Speaker, a lot of words, but not a yes. So that's two important promises to the North that he won't stand by. No wonder trust in the Prime Minister is at an all-time low. Across the country and belatedly across this House, there is now agreement that Owen Paterson broke the rules and that the government should not have tried to let him off the hook. Many members opposite have apologised. The Business Secretary has apologised for his part. The Leader of the House has apologised for his part. But they were following the Prime Minister's lead. So will he do the decent thing and just say sorry for trying to give the green light to corruption?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, as I've said before, it certainly was a mistake to conflate the case of an individual member, no matter how sad, with the point of principle at stake, and we do need a cross-party approach on an appeals process. We also need, Mr. Speaker, a cross-party approach on the way forward, and that's why we've tabled the proposals that we have to take forward the report of the Independent Committee for Standards in Public Life of 2018 with those two key principles that everybody in this House should focus primarily and above all on their job here in this House, and secondly, that no one should exploit their position in order to advance the commercial interests of anybody else. That's our position, Mr. Speaker. We want to take forward those reforms. In the meantime, perhaps he could clear up from his proposals, whether he would continue to be able to take money as he did from Mishcon de Rea and other legal firms.
Order. Prime Minister. As you know, and I do remind you, it's Prime Minister's questions, not Leader of the Opposition's questions. Keir Starmer.
That's not an apology. Everybody else has apologised for him, but he won't apologise for himself. A coward, not a leader. Weeks defending corruption. Yesterday, a screeching last-minute U-turn to avoid defeat on Labour's plan to ban MPs from dodgy second contracts. But waving one white flag won't be enough to restore trust. And there are plenty of opposition days to come. And we will not let the Prime Minister water down the proposals or pretend that it's job done. We still haven't shut the door on the revolving door where ministers are regulating a company 1 minute and working for them the next. There are plenty of cases that still stain this House. There are two simple steps to sorting it out: proper independence and powers for the Business Appointments Committee and banning these job swaps. Will the Prime Minister take those steps?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've called, as you know, and indeed you have called, Mr. Speaker, for a cross-party approach to this. And what I think we need, to do is to work together on the basis of the independent report by the Committee of Standards in Public Life to take things forward and indeed to address the appeals process. But what I think everybody can see, Mr. Speaker, is that in a classic lawyerly way, the right honourable gentleman is now trying to prosecute others for exactly the course of action that he took himself. And what I think the nation wants to know, because his register is incomplete, who paid Mishcon de Rea and who paid the 25,000? Who's paying him for his...
Just a minute. Prime Minister, I don't want to fall out about it. I've made it very clear. It is Prime Minister's questions. It's not for the opposition to answer your question. Whether we like it or not, those are the rules of the game that we're all into, and we play by the rules, don't we? And we respect this House, so let's respect the House. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, that newfound commitment to upholding standards didn't last long. Mr. Speaker, here's the difference. When somebody in my party misbehaves, I kick them out. When some...
Order. Mr. Clark.
Where's Rob
Mr. Clark. And I don't think... Look, this is not good. We lost a dear friend. I want to show that this House has learnt from it. I don't want each other to be shouted down. I want questions to be respected. I expect the public to actually be able to hear the questions and the answers, because I'm struggling in this chair. I need no more. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, when somebody in my party misbehaves, I kick them out. When somebody in his party misbehaves, he tries to get them off the hook. I lead, he covers up. Let's try another issue. We know that Owen Paterson was a paid lobbyist for Randox. We know that he sat in on a call between Randox and the minister responsible for handling health contracts. We know that Randox has been awarded government contracts worth almost £600 million without competition or tender. Against that backdrop, the public are concerned that taxpayers' money may have been influenced by paid lobbying. There's only one way to get to the bottom of this: a full, transparent investigation. If he votes for Labour's motion this afternoon, that investigation can start. Will he vote for it, or will he vote for another cover-up?
Prime Minister.
I'm very happy to publish all the details of the Randox contracts, which have been investigated by the National Audit Office already. We're talking of cover-ups. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, but we still have not heard why the Honourable Gentleman will not tell...
Order. Prime Minister, sit down. Prime Minister, I'm not going to be challenged. You may be the Prime Minister of this country, but in this House, I'm in charge, and we're going to carry on. End of that. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Prime Minister just said he's happy to publish all the Randox papers in relation to these contracts, so we'll take that and we'll pursue it. And I remind the Prime Minister, when I was Director of Public Prosecutions, I prosecuted MPs who broke the rules. He has been investigated by every organisation he's ever been elected to. That's the difference. Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money handed to their mates and donors. Tory MPs getting rich by working as lobbyists, one not even bothering to turn up because he's in the Caribbean advising tax havens. And the Prime Minister somehow expects us to believe that he's the man to clean up Westminster. He led his troops through the sewers to cover up corruption, and he can't even say sorry. The truth is that beneath the bluster, he still thinks it's one rule for him and another for his mates. At the same time as his government are engulfed in sleaze, they're rowing back on the promises they made to the North. And it's working people who are paying the price. Is it any wonder that people are beginning to think that the joke isn't funny anymore?
Mr. Speaker, it is plain from listening to the right honourable gentleman that he seeks to criticise this government while refusing to explain his own position. And you've ruled on that, Mr. Speaker. You've ruled on that, Mr. Speaker, and I hear you. But his own misconduct, Mr. Speaker, is absolutely clear to everybody. His own misconduct is absolutely clear. And meantime, Mr. Speaker, we will get on a cross-party basis. We will get on a cross-party basis with taking forward the business that I've outlined, and we will get on with the business of this government, which is leading the country out of the pandemic.
Prime Minister, I'm struggling to hear, and if it's correct what I've said, it was about Leader of the Opposition and misconduct. We can't or cannot accuse somebody of misconduct. Now, I may, and just before the Leader of the House gives me an answer, all I'm trying to say, I cannot hear. If it was said, I want it withdrawn. If it wasn't, I will accept it. I'm just a moment. Prime Minister, I can't.
Mr. High Speaker, I referred to the right honourable gentleman's misconduct, because that is what he is guilty of. That is what he is guilty of.
Order. I don't think this has done this House any good today. I'll be quite honest, I think it's been ill-tempered. I think it shows the public that this House has not learned from the other week. I need this House to gain respect, but it starts by individuals showing respect to each other. Right, let's go to Lee, no less. We're going to James Grundy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The people of Lee have never accepted our forced merger with the friendly rivals, but rival town of Wigan back in 1973. Could the Prime Minister tell me how we could escape the big government of Big Wigan by getting our own council back?
Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend and I thank him for his campaign against local Labour government over-taxing and delivering inadequate services. The local boundary commission will look at the boundary reviews, but meantime I will support him in any way that I can.
We now go to the Leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it used to always be said that the Tory MPs were behind the Prime Minister, but my goodness, look at the gaps on the third, fourth and fifth benches. Mr. Speaker, the rebellion has clearly started. Mr. Speaker, this Tory sleaze scandal has now been hitting the headline for the past 14 days. And yet, it's pretty obvious that the Prime Minister spent less than 10 minutes coming up with yesterday's half-hearted, half-baked and already half-botched proposals. These so-called reforms don't even scratch the surface. This sleaze scandal runs far, far deeper. Month after month, the public have witnessed scandal after scandal. Peerages handed to millionaire donors. VIP lanes gifted COVID contracts to Tory pals. Dodgy donations for luxury holidays and home renovations. The Prime Minister and his government have been up to their necks in sleaze. Can the Prime Minister tell us exactly which one of these scandals his proposals would have stopped?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the humble crofter, as he refers to himself, for his question, and I would just say that what I think we can do is pursue a cross-party approach based on the report of the Independent Committee on Standards in Public Life, which has much of profit in it. And it says, amongst other things, that it's important that this House should be augmented with outside experience of the world. It's important that members of this House should have experience of the private sector, as he does. And I think on a cross-party basis, we should proceed with the couple of reforms that I've indicated.
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, this is about Tory sleaze and Tory corruption. And the Prime Minister has basically admitted that not one of this government's sleaze scandals would have been stopped by his so-called plan. And perhaps we shouldn't be surprised, considering the Prime Minister has been at the rotten core of all these scandals. The trail of sleaze and scandal all leads back to the funding of the Conservative Party. Since 2010, Mr. Speaker, the Tory Party has made nine of its former treasurers members of the House of Lords. Every single one of them has something in common. They have handed over £3 million to the Prime Minister's party. That is the very definition of corruption. It is the public's definition of corruption. Will this government finally accept that this is corruption, or is the Prime Minister the only person in the country who is the brass neck to argue that it was all one big coincidence?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have to say that I won't comment on the missing £600,000 from the SNP's party accounts. But I do say, Mr. Speaker, in all sincerity and heeding what you've said earlier on, I think these constant attacks on the UK's levels of corruption and sleaze do a massive disservice do a massive disservice to billions of people around the world who genuinely suffer from governments that are corrupt, who genuinely have no ability to scrutinise their MPs, Mr. Speaker. This is one of the cleanest democracies in the world, and people should be proud of it.
Simon Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Prime Minister join me in celebrating the 50th anniversary this year of the formation of the 177-mile path for walkers along Offord Dyke, which runs through Clwyd South, and give his support to the recently launched Offord Dyke Rescue Fund to repair and preserve this monument and nature reserve for future generations?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've had the good fortune to walk Offord Dyke very recently, and I'm delighted that English and Welsh organisations are working together to protect that fantastic national monument, and Historic England has committed to give almost £300,000 more to that great cause.
David.
Mr. Speaker, ambulance response times are now the worst ever. People are waiting for ambulances longer than ever. And with A&Es in crisis, patients are stuck in ambulances outside hospital longer than ever. Waiting times aren't statistics, they are people. People often in great pain and in danger. So why is this government closing ambulance stations in parts of our country? Why is the West Midlands Ambulance Service closing up to 10 community ambulance stations in Rugby, Oswestry and Craven Arms? With this health crisis for our ambulance services and in our A&Es, injured, sick and elderly people are being hit. When will the Prime Minister deal with this health crisis?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that ambulance crews and ambulance services are doing an amazing job, particularly at this time of year, and I thank them for what they're doing. We are supporting them with more cash. Another £450 million was awarded to 120 trusts to upgrade their facilities. And as he knows, we're putting another £36 billion into dealing with the backlogs, which is fundamentally affecting the NHS so badly at the moment, through the levy that we've instituted, which I don't think he supported.
Andrew Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Domestic heating accounts for 30% of UK carbon emissions, and I support the government's incentive scheme to replace the old gas boilers with environmentally friendly alternatives. But now we're building more homes than we have for many, many years. Can we build upon the success of COP26 and ask really what is the progress that is being made on the standards for new build homes to make sure that our new homes are fit for the future?
Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend. He's totally right to focus on the issue of future-proofing homes and making them low carbon. And by 2025, our future homes standard will ensure that new homes produce at least 75% fewer CO2 emissions.
Fairness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I visited a GP practice in my constituency of Sheffield, Brightside and Hillsborough and was horrified to hear about the amounts of abuse staff are currently experiencing. Their workloads are under extreme pressure, and this is not helped by the Prime Minister making demands about appointments, whilst he has still failed on his manifesto pledge to recruit 6,000 more GPs. So, will the Prime Minister apologise for this broken promise to GPs and their staff who are on the front line working under ever-increasing pressure and depleted staffing resources?
Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, I want to thank GPs for everything that they're doing, particularly during the booster rollout. But what we're also doing is not just recruiting as many GPs as we can, but we have 10,000 more nurses this year than last year, 25,000 more healthcare professionals altogether. There are more people, Mr. Speaker, now working in the NHS than at any time in its history. And because of our investment, the extra 36 billion that we're putting in, there will be even more. And I'm afraid that the lady opposite voted against that investment.
David Druid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Following on from COP26, can my right honourable friend confirm that maximising carbon capture and storage capacity across the whole United Kingdom is a priority for this government? And, I mean, despite the doom and gloom and the words of rejection and snubbing and SNP members members opposite, can he also confirm that the Acorn carbon capture and storage and hydrogen project in my constituency of Banff-and-Buchan has a key role to play in this country's future carbon capture and storage capacity targets to meet net zero?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and he's quite right to champion carbon capture and storage, which has a great future in Scotland, in spite of all the gloom-stirring of the party opposite. The Scottish cluster remains on the reserve, and we will continue to study it, and we hope to bring it forward in due time.
Murray Glendon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The River Tyne, with its world-renowned offshore and subsea sectors, has been repeatedly sidelined by this government, despite me and others constantly lobbying ministers for investment that would massively increase employment opportunities and help the UK's transition to net zero. However, Mr. Speaker, I'm very excited to see our voice is now being magnified by a new Tyne task force set up by the local authorities, the port, businesses and the combined authority. So will the Prime Minister, here and now, commit his government to work with us to realise the full potential of our great river?
Prime Minister.
I thank the honourable lady for her question, and she's absolutely right that the River Tyne is a massive economic asset for the whole of the North East. It has suffered from historic contamination, but we're going to work with the North East Local Enterprise Partnership to invest another £6 million to help develop clear plans for sustainable economic growth along the whole of the estuary.
Henry Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Crawley constituency was one of the most negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, but thanks to significant support from this government, we are seeing recovery, unemployment now beginning to come down, and we look to a confident future. In that vein, will my right honourable friend please look favourably on Crawley's Platinum Jubilee city status bid?
Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. I wasn't aware until today that Crawley was bidding to become a city, but I will look at it. I will look at it very carefully, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure there is an excellent case in there somewhere.
David Linden.
Thank you. Speaker, every year 100,000 babies are born premature or sick in the UK and admitted to neonatal intensive care units. The Prime Minister will be aware that today is World Prematurity Day. Now, there's cross-party agreement in this House to bring forward neonatal leave and pay. So rather than wait for a complex, controversial employment bill, will the Prime Minister bring alongside a standalone bill to legislate for this so that next World Prematurity Day the 100,000 babies and their parents don't have to choose between spending time in the hospital or unpaid leave from work?
I thank the honourable gentleman. I know he's a passionate campaigner in this area, and one way or another, and I'll get back to him on the exact way, Mr. Speaker, we will legislate to allow parents of children in neonatal care to take extended leave, giving them more time during the most vulnerable and stressful days of their lives.
Chris Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further education colleges like Hotwood Hall in my Hayward and Middleton constituency will play an essential part in building back better. The team at Hotwood have supported over 8,000 learners on courses as diverse as small business management and animal management, as well as 6 new T-level courses. So, can I invite my right honourable friend to come and visit the inspirational team and the students at Hotwood Hall, and as a special treat, come and see Middleton's very own flamboyants and flamingos and our endangered potoroos?
Prime Minister.
I thank him for his kind invitation. I'll certainly keep it in mind, and the government is absolutely committed to reforming technical education through new T-levels, and that's why we're investing a further £65 million to develop teacher retention and support and recruitment for teachers in FE. As for the potoroos in his area, I will bear that. Are they wild, Mr. Speaker? I will do my utmost to come and inspect them.
Rebecca Longbelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Laura told me that Remembrance Sunday hurts. It hurts because there have been no medals for her granddad's service and the thousands of men involved in nuclear weapons tests overseas between 1952 and 1991. It hurts because studies of such veterans have shown increased miscarriages, increased birth defects, and the same rate of genetic damage as clean-up workers at Chernobyl. And it hurts because the UK is the only nuclear power on earth who has denied recognition. So I ask the Prime Minister, will he recognise nuclear testing veterans today and agree to meet them? The Leader of the Opposition has.
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to her for bringing this to my attention, and I will certainly make sure that we get a proper meeting with representatives of the nuclear veterans that she raises.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I was in Greece with Save the Children, I learnt that change at any border was quickly communicated down the line. If migrants and asylum seekers knew that they would be directly returned to France or taken to a third country pending application, if they knew this, would they risk a dangerous and illegal crossing and make their way to France in the first place? Can I ask my right honourable friend what further measures are being considered? Because this is an issue of great concern in Eastbourne, along the coast, along the country, and I'm anxious to be able to reassure my constituents that there are plans ahead.
Prime Minister.
I thank her very much, and she has much relevant experience in her work for Save the Children in Greece. Our only credible way of fixing this, Mr. Speaker, is with our new plan for immigration, and that will be made possible with our new Nationality and Borders Bill, which will make it possible for us to distinguish at last between those who come here legally and those who come here illegally, Mr. Speaker. And I hope very much that it will command the support of the whole House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In May, part of Northwich Station in my constituency collapsed. I've asked the Transport Secretary to intervene and build back better and fairer to allow access for people with disabilities. He's declined my kind offer. I'll ask the Prime Minister to intervene. No bluster, substance, build back better and fairer, Northwich Station, it's in the north of England. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm tempted to invite the honourable gentleman to wait and see what we do for rail funding tomorrow, but I will certainly look at what he has to say about Northwich Station with keen interest.
Sir Rutherford.
Over 4,200 servicewomen and veterans use a democratic process to contribute to the Defence Select Committee's inquiry into women in the armed forces. A formal response is still awaited from the MOD. Now, whilst the majority of women enjoy a fulfilling career in the military, shocking issues were raised around sexual assault, bullying and harassment. I know the Prime Minister agrees with me that our armed forces are the best in the world. Would he also agree with me that we need to make sure the British Army is the best place to serve as a woman?
Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and she's campaigning on a very, very important issue. I think too often we find that our armed forces fail to provide the wonderful women in our armed forces with the support that they deserve, and that's why I'm pleased that my honourable friend, the Defence Secretary, has secured a parliamentary inquiry into this for the first time, and it's vital that we support and encourage women in our armed forces who make a massive difference to those services.
Paisley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It has cost businesses in Northern Ireland the £850 million to date to operate the failed and suffocating protocol. Lord Frost is today in Belfast. When will the Prime Minister fix this by legitimately activating Article 16?
Prime Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman, and I think the word I would fasten on in his question is legitimately. And there is no question that the use of Article 16, which after all has been done by the EU Commission to stop vaccines being exported to this country, is something that is perfectly legal and within the bounds of the protocol.
Jane Hunt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited Humphrey Perkins School in beautiful Barrow-upon-Soar. The students asked me there, what is the government doing to engage children and students from all backgrounds to encourage them to aspire to become an MP and even the Prime Minister?
Prime Minister.
I think what I would say to my honourable friend and her students is that nothing that is said or that takes place in this House, none of the argy-bargy, the repartee, the occasional abuse to which we subject each other, Mr. Speaker, should in any way deter anybody from seeking a career in politics, but it is a wonderful privilege, and we are all, Mr. Speaker, very lucky to be here.
Sting Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of Edinburgh West, we are now finding numerous people coming to us with delays from DWP in pensions and benefits, to add to the delays that others are facing over passports and DVLA. Can the Prime Minister tell us, please, amongst the many jobs being done at the moment, who is making sure that the departments of government are running smoothly and quickly?
Prime Minister.
I thank her, and I think actually that the Department for Work and Pensions under my right honourable friend the Secretary of State has been a government that has performed outstanding service, performed miracles, and amongst the things that it has achieved, Mr. Speaker, is to help to get millions of people effectively back into employment in spite of all the difficulties that we have faced. We now have unemployment running at virtually record lows in spite of all the difficulties we faced in this pandemic as we come out of furlough, and that is largely thanks to the work of the DWP. Of course, there is more that can be done, and that people can always up their game, Mr. Speaker, but I think that the DWP, the officials working in the DWP across the country, huge numbers of men and women, have done an outstanding job.
Final question, Jake Barrett.
Mr. Speaker, in July 2019, I was in Manchester when the Prime Minister committed to build a new line, Northern Powerhouse Rail, between Manchester and Leeds. It was a commitment reaffirmed in our manifesto in November 2019 and last month reaffirmed in the Prime Minister's conference speech in Manchester. Were the voters of the North right to take the Prime Minister at his word?
Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, but they should wait and see what is unveiled tomorrow, where, Mr. Speaker, he may learn something to his advantage.
A point of order, Michael Fabricant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I've just received on the wires that the Leader of the Opposition, and I didn't hear this at the time because of so much noise, called the Prime Minister a coward. Surely that is in breach of Erskine May and improper and should be withdrawn.
Can I say there was a lot of language that I couldn't hear today, and I certainly don't want words. Coward is not what is used in this House, and I'm sure that Leader of Opposition would withdraw.
I withdraw it, but he's no leader.
Tim Farron, point up. Pushing it today, come on.
Mr. Speaker, alongside the honourable members for Bermondsey and Old Southwark, and for Ruislip, Northwood and Pinner, and our friend in the other place, the Bishop of Durham, we've been pressing ministers in the Home Office to permit a cross-party visit to the Napier Barracks. On September the 7th, the Minister for Future Borders and Immigration declined our request for an in-person visit, and indeed the Home Affairs Select Committee were also refused a visit in July. On October 27th, we again requested an on-site visit and asked the Minister to respond by November the 10th. We have still yet to hear anything. Despite the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration and Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons finding earlier this year serious concerns and failings in the provision of accommodation at Napier Barracks, the Government has extended the use of Napier Barracks to 2025 and stated the site will be used to pilot design of future accommodation for asylum seekers. So you can see, Mr. Speaker, that a visit is now more than pressing. Could you advise me, Mr. Speaker, whether it is in order for the Government to refuse access to this important site to Members of Parliament?
Can I first of all say I'm grateful to the honourable member for giving notice of points of order. It is for the Government to decide whether to invite members to visit the barracks. That said, the use of the barracks has been a matter of public concern and debate, and of course I would always encourage the Government to agree to such requests from honourable and right honourable members, not least to ensure that they are able to hold the Government to account in a well-informed manner. I accept that there are occasions where it is legitimate for the Government to refuse a request for a visit. For example, on security grounds, and I should stress that I do not know any reason for refusal in this case. However, the government benches will have heard my view that, in principle, I would hope that such requests for visits can be accommodated, and at the very least, I hope that Home Office ministers will discuss the matter properly with the honourable gentleman, and I hope that that doesn't take too long to contact him. Point of order, Martin Docherty Hughes.
Grateful, Mr Speaker. I had no intention to take a point of order until I heard the Prime Minister's answer to my honourable friend, the member for Wrexham, in relation to their chairing the subcommittee on women in the armed forces. The Prime Minister indicated a parliamentary inquiry, I think, based on that report. Given that we've seen a tenfold increase in the reporting of rape and sexual assault of women under the age of 18 in the armed forces, can you advise the House why the Government and the Prime Minister today making a statement, not meeting the demands of my right honourable friend, the member for Wrexham, and also implementing the Wigston review?
What I would say is, it's a continuation of a question earlier. What I would say is we do take seriously the point that's been made. What I would say is the member concerned, the member for Wrexham, if she feels that she needs a statement or an UQ could possibly be an answer to her wishes to continue it, I'm sure that it could be looked favourable upon. Right, no further points of orders. We now go, well, it's very quiet. I now go to the presentation of the bill. Angus Brendan McNeill.
Thank you.
Thought you'd got that.
Sorry. Peerage nominations, disqualification of party donors bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 26th of November.
Friday the 26th of November. Thanks, Angus. Thanks a lot. We now come to the 10-minute rule motion, disposable barbecues. I now call Robert Lager.
Mr Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to prohibit the use of disposable barbecues on open moorland, to give local authorities the power to regulate the sale of disposable barbecues in their area and for connected purposes. This year alone, at least 2 wildfires have been caused by disposable barbecues in High Peak, destroying hectares of farmland and environmentally significant peatland. In 2019, a fire in Marsden Moor, near Huddersfield, raged for 4 days and damaged over 700 hectares of moorland. A similar fire in April 2021 caused an estimated £200,000 worth of damage. In addition to this crude financial cost lies an environmental one. This is damage that will take hundreds, if not thousands of years to repair, with peat accumulating at a rate of around just 1 millimetre per year. Distressed sheep farmers have also conveyed to me the pain that they have experienced, being forced to clear up the charred remains of their own livestock. Mr Speaker, every year from the spring to the summer, communities across the country live in fear of wildfires that are entirely avoidable. A local gamekeeper once told me that there are 3 main causes of wildfires: men, women and children. But more specifically, a large number of fires are caused simply by people not disposing of their barbecue properly, leaving it unattended on the ground where its residual heat or a stray spark are enough to start a fire. Mr Speaker, the aims of this bill are simple: to reduce the risk of wildfire and protect our beautiful countryside, to protect local communities faced with the threat of wildfires, to protect hard-pressed farmers' livelihoods, and to protect carbon-capturing peatland, which is so vital in our fight back against climate change. And this last point is particularly important, especially given the recent climate change agreement in Glasgow. The Glasgow Agreement is an important step forward. 65 countries have committed to phasing out the use of coal power. Some of the world's largest car manufacturers have agreed to make all new car sales zero emission by 2040, and the leaders of 90% of the world's forests have pledged to end deforestation by 2030. But alongside vital international cooperation, let's not forget the importance of nature-based solutions to climate change. Peatland restoration is an essential part of this. Wet, healthy peat soils absorb and trap carbon dioxide. Worldwide, it is estimated that peatland contains more than 550 gigatons of carbon. That's more than stored in all of the world's forests put together. In regulating the flow of groundwater, restoring peatland also reduces the risks of flooding, improves water quality and enhances biodiversity. Since being elected, I have actively campaigned